Good evening, everyone. We're going to get started. I have never received any recruiting information or been made aware of any education services offered to student athletes. We felt completely alone on our own in the recruiting process. Most parents don't know who the athletic staff contact is for recruiting. Much more visibility and support is needed in this role for parents. We feel like we're in a dark room and we can't find our way around. There needs to be more education of parents and students early in the process of what steps they can take to increase the chances that a student is recruited. We have no idea what the recruiting process is. These are just some of the verbatims when we surveyed Westminster parents of student athletes and asked them about college athletics recruiting education. We heard you, your feedback is valid and legitimate, and we want you to know that this is a priority for us. For those of you who haven't yet had the opportunity to meet, my name is Shannon Soares, and I have the privilege of serving as the Director of Athletics here at Westminster. In total, over 520,000 student athletes compete in NCAA championship sports across divisions 1, 2, and 3. Those 520,000 student athletes are representing over 1,000 different institutions. According to an NCAA goals study, 90% of student athletes say college sports have helped them grow in personal responsibility, work ethic, teamwork, and goal setting. A Gallup study from 2020 revealed that former NCAA student athletes are more likely than other college graduates to be thriving in areas such as community, social, physical, and purpose. In a study by the Harvard Business School, members of college sports teams secure higher level jobs and better pay after graduation than their non-athlete peers. Collegiate student athletes are often spending more than 20 hours a week devoted and committed to their respective sport. As a college coach for over a decade at the Division I level, I spent my holidays on the recruiting trail at tournaments. I had families on my couch in the office at Georgetown, and I found myself recruiting prospective student athletes from institutions very similar to this one. I'm a massive proponent of college athletics and what it builds in young people and the lessons that it teaches people in life. And at Georgetown, we used to talk about how 4 years can set you up for the next 40. And I truly believe that to be true. We're pleased to welcome you tonight to our Parents College Athletics Recruitment Program. In a community that attracts bright, driven, athletically talented young people, we owe it to our families to provide you with ways that you can help your child navigate the exploration of competing at the next level. We hope tonight will arm you with information and guidance that'll help you in supporting your child do just that. We want you to know that we care. We want you to know that this matters to us and that we're here to help. Tonight, we're going to do 3 things. The first thing is we're going to share some background on our team and the resources that we have here at Westminster. The second thing we're going to do is provide you with some need to knows around college athletics and the college athletics recruitment process. And finally, we're going to let you hear it from the coaches themselves. We are privileged to have 4 incredible coaches from high academic institutions here with us tonight to participate in a moderated discussion around college athletics recruitment. We want you to leave here tonight with more clarity around the process itself, ideas around next steps for your child in their pursuit, and an increased level of confidence that if you need help in this process, we are here to give that to you. It's now my pleasure to introduce Alex Ritchie, Westminster's head of program for girls basketball, also our coordinator of youth programs and equipment operations. Alex joins us after 10 years as the head women's basketball coach at Oglethorpe University, where he also happens to be the most winningest coach in women's sports history there. Alex is also the co-founder and owner of the Atlanta Bucks, which is the state's largest youth club basketball organization, and his experience in recruitment is extensive. We're really looking forward to what he has to share with you tonight, and we thank you for joining us. Alex?
Good evening. I'm Alex Ritchie. So honored to be here to be a part of this Westminster community. I'm so honored that you could spend the time with us here on a Tuesday night, and I really appreciate you coming out to learn this ever-evolving world that is college recruitment. I want to make sure that I thank our panelists who have traveled far and wide, hopped on airplanes this morning, made it through Atlanta area traffic to be here with us today, and I do apologize that West Paces Ferry didn't really want to help us out today, but we're super excited to be here. This is the first of many opportunities for us to educate our families, educate our students in the recruitment process. And I'm honored and privileged to be in this role to help in any way that I possibly can. So putting a name with a face is extremely important for me tonight. And again, in my background, in the last 12 years that I've spent coaching at the collegiate level, it's been very, very exciting, very, very rewarding to help some student athletes achieve success by reaching their goals and aspirations of competing at the next level. It's always great when your morning starts off with really good news. And as before we get started, I got an awesome email this morning from a family that we have already met with as we've begun our process of helping families navigate this recruitment process. Trevor Dempsey came and met with me in his office about a month ago to better understand the opportunities that he was going to have of competing at the Division I level, competing at the Division III level. This morning, I got an email from his mother thanking Coach Darlak, her college coach, or her high school coaches, Coach Christie, Coach Sharon Lochran, Shannon, myself, who'd met with Trevor and helped him navigate the process. This morning, we got the great news that Trevor committed to Lafayette University. So Mrs. Dempsey's here in the crowd. If we could give her a round of applause on some great news. It's so rewarding to see these kids achieve their goals and their dreams. And it's our hope that we get to have these types of conversations, these types of exciting news that we can share with this community throughout the year. Again, I've only been here about 2 months. And I've had a lot of conversations with a lot of families and a lot of students. And during that time, I've gotten a lot of good questions, but I've also learned quickly that there's a ton of opportunity for us to educate our families, educate our students in a better way. And so we are going to attack that with a team-based approach with a number of my colleagues in the athletics department and in our campus community in order to make sure that we meet those needs. And so I'm really excited to show some faces that have extensive experience in the recruiting world. But I do want to make sure that I mention that tonight, as you leave, and you know and understand that there are a variety of different resources on this campus for you to help navigate this process. We want you to feel as you leave tonight that you certainly are not alone. The Westminster community has an extremely skilled athletic team, okay? Of our 150 coaches, nearly a third of them competed or coached at the collegiate level. Within just our leadership team, we have over 70 years of college coaching experience. So you have experts in this realm within our campus community that we want you to utilize. We are representing nearly 48 institutions of all different levels, Division I, Division II, Division III, junior college, NAIA, every level within our athletic department is represented both either playing or on the coaching realm. So there are numerous opportunities that we can speak to from our experience. I do want to talk about the importance of marketing for our student athletes as we move this conversation. And I'm biased that young lady is going to have the opportunity. I'm going to get the opportunity to coach that young lady with the basketball in her hand. Fantastic student athlete that I'm really excited to work with, who's shown aspirations of competing at the collegiate level. And you know, as a former college coach and now serving in the upper school, I want to make sure that everyone is aware that our heads of program are here to work with our student athletes. Our coaching staffs are here to work with our student athletes in order to help them through the recruitment process. I want you to leave tonight knowing that that's part of our responsibility and part of our role as coaches. And we find a great deal of satisfaction when we get to share that great news of helping a student achieve their goals and dreams. As you go through the marketing process, there's a variety of different things that you can use at your disposal in order to help your student athlete achieve their success as they navigate recruitment. One, we want to certainly talk with them about meeting with their head coach. We also want to talk about the presence of building a good rapport with utilizing your social media accounts. college coaches are utilizing social media more and more to help navigate the recruitment process. And we want to make sure that your student athletes are armed with the knowledge to create social media accounts that are proper and that can be a benefit. I also want to make sure that we point out that if you're not using social media in a proper way, it can be a real deterrent for your student athlete. And so I'm going to tell a personal anecdote. We had a young lady that I recruited not too long ago in the near recent past that we loved. We thought she was going to be a great asset, a great talent into our program. But unfortunately, when we were about to make our offer of roster admittance to that student athlete, when we did our background research and checked her social media accounts, it was very inappropriate. And that really became a deterrent for us to have her as a part of our program. So we moved on to another student athlete. So I want to make sure that everyone knows and understands that as we talk about this, it's a reality that social media can be a deterrent, but it also can be a great advocate. Okay, if you're sharing your highlight film, if you're creating cultural things that involve your program or what you're doing within your program, it can be a real asset if done correctly. Another area that we want to make sure that we talk about involves creating an athletic CV, creating huddle highlights. Some people may ask, what's an athletic CV? And I have some great examples that I'm more than willing to share if anybody wants to reach out at a later time with an athletic CV. Our student athletes that we've met, we encourage them to create those. But essentially, an athletic CV is a resume. Okay, it's going to provide academic information. It's going to provide athletic information, and sometimes it'll even create. If you do it interactively, you can have your links to your film as well. So, a great resource that college coaches can utilize for them to click through and get a basic insight into that athlete in order for them to direct their attention. Because these folks, they get emails and calls and contacts hundreds a day, and so we want to do all we can to have our athletes separate themselves. As we go through the process of knowing more and more about what social media can do, I want to make sure that I encourage you all to have conversations with your athletes about the do's and don'ts of social. Okay. Again, we want to be able to create and utilize film. We want to share positive content. At the same time, we want to make sure that we're, avoiding inappropriate language, inappropriate contact. These things matter. And following, organizations or programs that your student athlete may be a part of is definitely a benefit. So you can specifically know what's going on with a potential program that your student athlete may be interested in. Okay. As we go through this even further, I want to talk a little bit about the importance of your club coach and how that club coach or how that head program can be the biggest advocates for your student athlete. Okay, your student athletes can lean and rely upon their coaches to get honest feedback on things that they may need to work on in order to achieve their goals of competing at the next level. They also will be a reference point for college coaches to reach out to. Okay, your college coaches that a number of you may hear that your college coach has reached out to, or your head of program maybe reached out to in order to provide a reference for your student athlete, whether it be based upon their character or their leadership traits. These are the types of things that will set your student athlete apart, and it's important for you to know that our coaches here on campus are going to be extremely transparent in that process, not only with your student athlete, but with that college coach as well. As we talk about the role of our recruiting team, as we talk about the role of heads of program and club coaches, all these folks are important, but quite frankly, the most important person in the recruiting process is the prospective student athlete. Again, we strongly encourage that you leave tonight and tell your student athletes to speak with their heads of program and speak with their club coaches if they're interested in competing at the next level. We want to create a long list, and you're going to hear Jay McCann talk about a long list here in a little bit. Early on in the recruitment process, and cast a wide net of schools that we may be of interest in as we go through the recruiting process, and going to those athletics websites and filling out recruit questionnaires and visiting those websites and learning more about those coaching staffs, those prospective rosters. Those things are all very, very valuable in order to build rapport with potential college opportunities. Also want to make sure as you go through communication process, you're preparing yourself to ask questions and making sure that these schools or these programs are checking the boxes for your student athlete that they may be looking for, whether they're geographic distances or they have needs at the position group that you may fill. The college recruitment process isn't a one size fits all, okay? A college program could have needs in a position group that your athlete may fit. They may very well not. So you have to know that kind of going in, and you can do that on the front end with a bunch of research, which we strongly encourage. Here are some discussion topics that I want to talk about that will be utilized by our recruiting team and our on-campus resources, okay? Again, we're gonna ask your student athlete early on in the process to create and cast a wide net. We're gonna talk to them a lot about where they are with their academic progress, where they're looking for academic programs at the next level, what their contributions may be to their team, what their goals are for maybe that upcoming season, and possibly even areas where they could see themselves needing to improve to compete at the next level. But again, there are a lot of factors that go in to what these student athletes are looking for. We want to make sure that we are checking those boxes to know and understand what's a great fit for this student athlete. And knowing that it's going to be a great fit both on the student athlete side and on the college recruiter side is going to be extremely important. And we're trying to find a great match. Again, we're going to discuss a lot of different things with your student athlete as we get to meet them. And it's my hope that you leave tonight knowing that your student athlete can reach out to us and schedule meetings with us throughout the academic day or something that fits with their schedule, whether it be a phone call, an email. We're certainly open and available to discuss, the college recruitment process at any time. You're going to hear me say this in a little bit, but I have small children, so my working hours are a little atypical. So feel free to have your student athlete reach out to me and know that it might be a little bit later in the evening and they'll still get a response after I put the kids to bed. So just know that we are not the typical 9 to 5, and we're here to work with your student athletes day or night. As we go through the recruitment process with these student athletes, again, if you have your student athletes have communication with their heads of program and they align their goals with their heads of program, you're going to be able to see them working towards their goals and aspirations of getting to the next level. One particular thing that we want to make sure that we mention as a student athlete goes through the recruitment process is, does that school meet your students' needs if sports weren't involved in the equation? I think that's an extremely important thing to think about. A lot of our student athletes are trying to set themselves up for success for the next 40 years, not necessarily the next 4. And so that's a conversation that you certainly want to have with your athlete, and just know that our recruiting team is going to be having that same conversation. I want to talk a little bit more in some generalities with everybody so they get a better understanding of the different levels of NCAA athletics and some of the key terms that may become prevalent in the recruiting process. Division I, everyone's watching Saturday college football, Dr. Pepper commercials, all those types of things. You're going to see a lot of resources poured into the Division I level, okay? NCAA March Madness, not to say other levels don't have championships and don't compete for championships, but a lot of resources are allocated to the Division I level. A lot of our Westminster student athletes are highly interested in the Division III model. Not to say that we won't touch on the Division II model, but what I've seen as a trend with our student athletes, if they're not looking at Division I, they're looking at high academic Division III schools, okay? And high academic Division III schools are still going to be extremely competitive, okay? I will tell you that the resources are significantly different between a Division I institution and a Division III institution, but at the same time, it's still opportunities to compete for championships. And what you'll see in a Division III athletic environment is more of a holistic viewpoint of a student. So you'll have a better balance in the social component, the academic component, and the athletic component. In a Division I program, as Shannon alluded to earlier, you should view that as more of a full-time job. Okay, 20 hours a week at minimum of working with a coach. Being on a very, very stringent and structured schedule is not atypical of what the Division I experience is. So you need to know going in that if your student is looking at a Division I experience, they're looking to go to work on day one. Okay, and that's part of the reason why they're invested with an athletic scholarship, which they can receive at the Division I level. At the Division III level, they're going to be looking more at merit-based award, or they're looking at more financial aid-based award, but no athletic scholarships are going to be offered at the Division III level. It's a great slide for everyone to see. The Division III level is actually the largest membership group of any level at the NCAA. Okay, the Division I level a little bit smaller than Division III, and what you'll see is a major difference in the allocation of resources for the Division I versus the Division III. Now I want to talk a little bit about some terms that may become prevalent in the recruiting process for you to know, understand. First, contact. Contact is any communication that happens between a prospective student athlete and a coaching staff. Okay, that can also include parent contact. There are certain different types of contacts: phone calls, emails, text messages, social media contact. There can also be contact that's in a live evaluation period, which we'll talk about a little bit more in a couple minutes. Contact period versus dead period. A contact period is where a college program can speak with or connect with a prospective student athlete. A dead period is just that, a period where a student athlete cannot be in contact with a coach or a coaching staff. So please, if your student athlete reaches out to a coach and they don't hear from them for a week, it's not time to panic. They could be in a dead period. You may not know it. So don't panic. Just know that those college coaches will get back to their student athlete after that dead period ends. Official and unofficial visits. This is a really important distinction, okay? Unofficial visits are covered by the family or by the prospective student athlete from an expense standpoint, and official visits are going to be covered by the school. Both visits have a great benefit, but really when you look at allocation of resources, official visits can be more prevalent for schools that have the resources in order to accomplish those at a more frequent rate. Many unofficial visits are still extremely important in the recruiting process for a lot of schools and institutions, and we encourage any student athlete to make sure that they go visit a campus before they make a decision on whether or not they want to be a part of that program or school. A verbal commitment, okay? A verbal commitment is a non-binding commitment that a student athlete may utilize when they decide they want to attend an institution. And I'm here to tell you, we take the verbal commitment extremely serious here. College coaches invest a lot of time and energy, resources into student athletes. And so when a student gives a verbal commitment, you know, we're firm believer that our words are bond. And if we are backing out of verbal commitments, it can really disrupt a relationship. So make sure that you emphasize with your student athlete, if they're ready to make a verbal commitment, they're ready to commit to that institution. The National Letter of Intent is a Division I binding agreement for a student athlete to sign their name on the dotted line to compete at the next level. Very exciting. We have a fall signing day and a spring signing day, and that's for all levels. Because the Division III model now actually has a celebratory signing form that's non-binding, but we are able to celebrate all of our signees with a fall event and a spring event. So just know that even if your student athlete hasn't decided where they want to be by Christmas time and they're still going through the recruitment process, there's still plenty of time to go with spring commitments and spring signings. But National Letter of Intent is a binding agreement between a student athlete and an institution, and it's found at the Division I level. I want to talk about evaluations, okay? So your student athlete is getting recruited and they're hearing from schools and you're generating a lot of interest and things are going extremely well in the communication process. And now that school is coming to watch your student athlete live. I want to make sure that we touch on this because it's extremely important for you to know and understand that you never know who's watching. Recruitment of a student athlete can also fall into recruitment of a family, okay? And so for parents, we strongly encourage that you put your best foot forward. You cheer and support for your kid. You cheer and support for their team. You lay off the officials if you so need to. And you build some rapport and relationship with those coaches when they come spend the time to visit. I think it's extremely important for you to know that. Using negative commentary, tearing down teammates, tearing down coaches, tearing down officials, it's a tough look. Okay, so I just want to make sure that I provide that information for you because as you try to separate yourself in the recruitment process, we want to make sure that we're putting our best foot forward, okay? And this also stands for our student athletes. You're going to hear us talk about as heads of program all the time, making eye contact with your coaches, not paying attention to what's happening in the stands, but paying attention to what's happening on the field or what's happening on the court, utilizing good body language, being a leader on the field. Again, these are the differentiating factors between getting an offer and then moving on to another person. All right. One of the things I want to make sure that I mention is the importance of transparency in this recruitment process. Okay. College coaches are talking to hundreds of kids for their rosters. It is totally fine for your student athlete to be talking to a number of schools. And we actually encourage our student athletes to let those college programs and college coaches know that they're talking to other institutions. That may help in their timeline. It may work in their favor. But being transparent helps build a relationship. Okay? I would tell recruits all the time, when you come here, we don't want to have any skeletons in the closet. We don't have any skeletons in the closet. We want you to be totally comfortable when you're here. College coaches reciprocate that. They want to be extremely confident that when your student athlete joins their program or joins their campus community, they know what they're getting. So as I leave you with that, I want to make sure to tell you that the last aspect of this is to know and understand where your student athlete may stand with a college program, with a recruiting program. I call this the like versus love mentality. It's better to be loved than liked, right? You're liked when you have general communication with a college program. That college may be responding to your emails, they're calling you, they're texting you, general conversation. As that conversation becomes more and more specific, and there may be conversations about unofficial visits or, what's going on in school, all those types of things, and we're diving into a little bit more specific relationship, that coach likes you a lot. We really want these college coaches to love our student athletes. And they love our student athletes when they make an offer. They love our student athletes when they invite them to campus and they're going to help with an official visit if they're so able to do so. They love our student athletes when the discussion topics in conversation are maybe about how your student athlete fits within their program and are very, very specific. So for you to know and understand where your student athlete may stand with a college program, know that as those conversations get more and more specific, that college program is investing more to know your child and to know that they're a asset to their program. I really appreciate the opportunity to speak on this topic. It's something I'm extremely passionate about. Our team is here for your student athletes. I get to introduce another member of our team. Jay McCann has been at Westminster for a number of years, and he has been an extremely positive ally for athletics here at Westminster. And Jay and I have gotten to meet and spend a lot of time together as we've gone through helping these student athletes. And we're going to continue to work together to make this experience for you all, for your student athletes, as seamless as possible. But I'm going to now pass it to Jay, who gets to speak more and more on the benefits of Westminster.
Great. Thank you. Yeah, thanks, Alex. Covered a lot there, and so I think I want to pick up where he's taking off of, but also wanting to reflect back on what Shannon has already shared, some of the comments that were a little bit uncomfortable to sit in, of how parents are sitting in this moment of wanting to make sure that you have the support that you need. How do college counselors come alongside in that? Because I'm just one of 5 on our team, and we want to make sure that you feel the support that you need. But also realize, if you're looking at it here, not till November of your junior year are you assigned a specific college counselor, right? And so what does that look like in the meantime or through that process? I want to run through very quickly how we service broadly all and help students in their process, but then also how it would work for some of our student athletes in their process. Before I do that, though, I'd love to get a read on the room. So you might have multiple students, so you're welcome to raise your hand more than once, but how many of you have a senior that's in the room? Okay, welcome, it's great. How about a junior? Okay, and sophomores? Great, freshmen? Second graders? No? Anyone under? Okay, got a couple. Okay, so it does seem like there's a pretty good distribution that's here in the audience, and so I'm glad to be able to see that. Let's see here. I imagine that many of you are asking deep questions about how you think about your students' future, and athletics is one part of that. And I think that's what's great about Westminster is there's such a strong emphasis towards the academics. And that's what I want to bring your attention to first is, what do we want from 9th and 10th graders? We want you to excel in school. We want you to do well. We want you to feel a sense of thriving in the curriculum that you're walking through and how you get to that. When it starts to feel college counseling more heavy in the late fall of your 11th grade year, that's on purpose, is that most independent schools in the country do not assign before this time period, because we don't think that you should apply to college for longer than you go to college, right? So we assign in November of junior year, and at that point we start first getting to know the student, right? We want to make sure that we hear from them before, no offense, but we want to get to know them as a person and not just a GPA, a test score. We want to make sure that we are able to learn who they are and advocate for them very well in this process. And so that starts with a relationship. And so if I think about the meetings that we kind of walk through, first attention towards that, and as we move into the early spring with the parent meeting, making sure that they feel that everyone's kind of understanding what the process looks like and how we navigate it. The second thing I want to draw your attention to is our college kickstart programming, is that we help students the full way through the application process, brainstorming all of the elements of what they're going to know about their senior year and how it's going to walk through early in the process, so they feel empowered in that. And then the third element of that is this one-on-one application support. Right now, every hour of every day, I am meeting with students. There was this, yesterday I had this like wonderful 15-minute window that I was going to meet with, and a student was like, nope, I'm going to then be at that time. Because that is what we want to make sure they do, is they feel a strong sense of support, that their essays and their applications and all the feedback that they have before they hit the submit button, which is coming very soon. October 15th is our first round, and we will probably send out, I would say about 80–85% of our students will submit their first application by then. And so if we think about, those are elements about the generalized process, then what are some of the other things that we start to look at in 9th and 10th grade? So if we obviously want them to excel in the classroom, we want them to excel in sports, right? We want them to be able to feel like they can get on our radar, as Alex has been sharing already, about making sure that we are seeing where they're going, that they're identifying that with the head coach and identifying it with our recruitment team about their interest in doing it, and then crafting emails to coaches. So what I would want is, when we identify colleges, is that we would want to make sure that they would think broadly. And I like the idea of athletes identifying around 30 schools would be great to start from, because it becomes a lot more narrow, right? I always say, you might think you're a D1 athlete, but when do we know that you're a D1 athlete? Is when you're offered by a D1 school, right? In the meantime, we would love to make sure that we have a good balance, right? So your goal may be UGA football, but in the meantime, let's look at some other Division I's and some other opportunities that are there. And so we want you to feel empowered to be able to craft email to coaches and start that process earlier. I see that there's plenty in the room that are juniors and seniors, and so not to leave you behind, but you will have full support in terms of our recruitment team in that process. So as this kind of journeys through the process, developing film and resume, some of those other things that Alex already alluded to, and then there is a continual refining process of it, but I don't want to negate that summer of going into your senior year can be a big time in terms of ID camps and a lot of things that go on. And so we will often check in with our students in August of saying like, so what happened? How did you crush it this summer? Or how we had a student that had an injury and had to fully pivot from what their intentions were for college and how that was going to play out. And then as we go into that process, there is sometimes that pre-read process, which a student will be reviewed by the admissions team, and will be an opportunity for them to see where they stand on admissibility, and the coaches will work with an athletic liaison from the admissions office to see what that opportunity might look like. So let's see here, other things I wanted to just put this up here, but other elements that kind of go into it is, if we think about in 2019, Rick Singer made national news for what became known as Operation Varsity Blues. During this time, he talked about this side door that where he really just took people's money, and some rich and sometimes well-known people became to the opportunity to be able to enroll in out-of-reach colleges. It's been 5 years since that moment, and you will know that admissions offices and athletic departments have never forgotten that moment, right? They have not. And so there is so much, and the conversation even came up slightly and during our lunch or our dinner together. So there is still an importance on this left side that it does show up, right? That we do want to make sure that students are exhibiting the qualities that would make them admissible, and that's part of the partnership between athletics and college counseling. And then those non-academic elements of who you show up on the field as, and even how your coaches might be able to rave about you is important as well. So what's interesting is we put up a broad timeline of how things go, but I've seen some students that have been offered to great institutions before 9th grade, and I've even had a student go enroll at a great Power 5 conference after graduating, right, and being offered there. And so it's interesting that we want to make sure that we keep the doors open and how things go through it. But the truth is that there is a gym door that exists on almost every college campus, and it is in benefit to both the colleges and the students in that process. And so we want to make sure that we give you the amount of information needed for that. This year, I had the really kind of interesting thing is that one of my former students was drafted by the NFL, and one of my students was able to participate in the Olympics. And it's really awesome to be able to see those students kind of excelling in the high level and how that went on. But they also, what I loved about them is they fostered relationships, they took advice well, and they worked hard in their classes as well. But on the other side, I can also think about the students I'm really happy for and have seen the achievement because they didn't have people chasing them down the same way, but they were willing to sit down in my office, craft emails, reach out to colleges, do the work that was needed to be able to make sure that they were playing and pursuing their dreams in the future. And so I think that's what I want to leave you with is that we as college counselors want to be a part of the process of seeing that success in the future and all of our students in whatever way that goes forward, the success that's continuing on from Turner. So I want to invite up to you, after you've heard a little bit about what's happening inside of Westminster, we want to hear about those voices outside so they can share expertise about the landscape of college athletics and the recruitment process. So would you mind please welcoming up 4 of our guests that I'm going to intro as well? So yeah, come on. So I'm going to go through each one, and if you don't mind just standing up when I read off your bio, that would be wonderful. So first, Aaron Kindt is the head cross-country coach at Auburn University, having joined the program after 7 successful years at Southern Miss. At Southern Miss, Kindt led the women's distance program to 2 runners-up finishes at the Conference USA Championships and played a key role in securing the program's first women's indoor Conference USA Championship. His coaching accolades include developing 6 first-team all-conference performers and achieving consistent academic success, with each of his cross-country teams recognized as USTFCCA all-academic team recipients. Thank you for that. A graduate of the University of Florida, he was a 4-year letter winner in cross-country and track, specializing in various distance events. Jack Leavitt is the head coach of the men's and women's swimming and diving programs at Georgetown University, a role he has held since June 2016. Under his guidance, the men's team clinched the program's first Big East championship in 2022. His coaching staff has earned multiple accolades, including the Big East Male Swimming and Diving Coaching Staff of the Year and Georgetown's Athletics Outstanding Coaching Achievement Award. Leavitt has led his team to a total of 6 runner-up finishes at Big East championships and has developed 105 student athletes who earned all Big East honors. Prior to Georgetown, he was head coach at Caltech, where he broke 31 school records. Leavitt began his career at the United States Military Academy, earning the Patriot League Coaching Staff of the Year award in 2013. Rodney Rogan was named the 8th head coach of the Johns Hopkins women's basketball program on August 7, 2023, after a successful 4-year stint at Rhodes College. During his tenure at Rhodes, he led the Lynx to a remarkable 67-28 record, securing 3 consecutive Southern Athletic Association tournament titles and 2 NCAA tournament appearances. Rogan's 2021-2022 team achieved a school record 23 wins and included a 12-0 in SAA play. He rose as high as number 19 in the HBCA poll. A former student player at Millsaps, Rogan was instrumental in guiding his alma mater to the NCAA Elite Eight, finishing his career with 1,355 points. He also received multiple accolades as a coach, including the SAA Coach of the Year award. Misha Jackson has been coaching at the Emory women's basketball program since 2017. Since taking the helm, she has led the Eagles to an impressive 83-42 record, including back-to-back NCAA tournament berths in 2023 and 2024. Under her guidance, the team has excelled in key statistical categories, finishing first in the University Athletic Association in opponent three-point percentage and achieving a conference-leading scoring defense. A former standout player at Emory, Jackson ranks among the program's top 10 all-time performers in multiple categories and was a WBCA honorable mention All-American. Whew. So we got some great people here, right? Oh, this is great. So we have a lot of great questions that we have tried to sort towards you and are going to ask along the way, and then we will open it up for a little bit of Q&A, but hopefully we've really tried to read your mind on some of the questions that are going through right now. So I'm going to open this up to each of you to start off this one time. But as you know, this tonight is a parents' education night. And so we are speaking to that audience about a growing need that some feel kind of a little bit lost in the process and are trying to figure out how do I engage as a parent? What is too much? What's too little? What is this kind of straight and narrow line in terms of what parent engagement looks like as we think about recruitment? And maybe we'll start from right to left. Is that okay?
Yeah. Hi. Yeah, I think from a parent involvement thing, first of all, this is really phenomenal that you guys all get this opportunity to hear from your administrators and people that want to help your kid. I think you choose a school like this for a reason, and it is beyond just getting your education and trying to help them develop into this the next 4 years after that and the 40 after that, right? So first, I just want to say that this is really unique what you guys are all experiencing right now. As a father of a independent school student as well, like this is pretty unique. So I just want to recognize that first. I think in terms of parent involvement, first and foremost, I think it's really important that we want to hear from your kid. I can tell if a parent wrote an email. I can tell if a parent crafted a text message. I want to hear from them. I'm going to spend a lot of time with them. And that relationship should get off to that start of me getting to know who they are, right? I think it's certainly helpful to keep them on task. I understand 15, 16, 17-year-olds have a lot going on in their lives and can be distracted quite easily. So in terms of just following up and being involved, when parents come to visit, I make sure that they sit in on our tours and our conversations, because I also know that what I'm telling them, maybe a third of it will get back to you. So making sure that we're kind of almost a partner in this process a little bit, making sure that all the information, they're organizing it correctly and staying on schedule in terms of communication. I think that's really appropriate and really helpful for us. But in terms of the actual communication, we want to make sure it's coming from them.
Is this working? Yeah. No, I agree with a lot of what he just said. My big thing when I have kids come into my office, if they're just kind of slouching there, eyes are darting around, and mom and dad are the ones that are like, come on, come on, come on, then clearly the kid has not shown enough interest to take the time to prep for this meeting. So little things like how you dress, the questions you ask, the attentiveness. I mean, I know kids, hey, I'm distracted too. I'm on my phone probably more than I need to be. But if the kid can't look me in the eyes for longer than 20 seconds, then I know we probably have a kid that we want to move on from. So you definitely, the more the kid shows interest and initiative, the more I'm going to want to invest in the kid. If the parent's driving the whole thing, then they're going to get here and they're going to be so lost and useless that I'm not looking to take care of another kid. I'm looking for someone that can help us get to the next level. So again, we want to maybe on the forefront give them some ideas of what to ask, but they need to show the initiative. This needs to be something they really want. And so it's almost where you guys just have to be almost like you can gently push them in the right direction. But in my meeting, if you're the one asking all the questions and me and you're just talking the whole time, we might get along really well, but then I'm gonna close the door and be like, all right, well, mom and dad were cool. All right, let's go back to my computer. So
I think parent involvement, it is important. Obviously, it's a big decision, and families are typically, important to the student athletes, and oftentimes our student athletes, they're encouraging, or they've talked to y'all before and told you to chill out a little bit. But I know that parents are very excited. So my biggest thing is we're recruiting the parents, we're recruiting the whole family. So when y'all come on campus, you guys are going to be a part of the visit. We always like to get a phone call or two with the parents. And so that's kind of what that will look like. The one thing I guess I do look for, if we're in the meeting in our office and the parent is speaking more than the student athlete, or they're jumping in there. I've seen that where I think you're used to being around your parents, you're used to kind of speaking for them, and maybe the child or the student athlete's a little bit more reserved. But I do notice that. I'm not necessarily writing someone off because of it, but I'm just aware of it. And sometimes, like, okay, I think they just need to be able to spread their own wings and learn to speak for themselves. But that's the one thing I look at. If dad is jumping in and answering every question, that will give me a little bit of pause.
They've all made some really great points. And one other thing I want to add about my background is I am from Atlanta, went to St. Pius High School, but I'm an only child. So I say that it's important for this question in particular because my parents have no baseline of what are we supposed to do. And so going back to with, I think they've touched upon like our experiences with the parents, but going back to like, okay, what should you be doing in the process? And every sport's different, but in that email and communication, easy thing for you to do, have them draft the first email, check it. Because, and I say that, it doesn't mean you have to put like, per my last email, coach, I'm following up with you. But there's a difference between, I have seen some amazing emails that's, coach, congratulations on an awesome season. Love da 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 da. Go Lions. We're the Eagles. So that's a simple thing a parent can catch or for something like that. We all perform at certain things. Parents, you're paying a lot of money, whether it's basketball, soccer, volleyball, football, whatever it may be, you're paying a lot of money. At some point in time, whether it's that club or you're at an event, there's usually some sort of recruiting something, a book, a packet, a profile, something that's being created. Check it. So for example, for basketball in particular, there's a recruiting book. It just says the jersey number, your name, address, telephone number. Now, you probably are paying around $500 for that tournament. Make sure Johnny, Sally's number is correct. Because there are times I've gone to an event and number 12 is not Sally. And guess what? I call Sally and it's like, hey, this is Jill. So it seems like something very simple, but the first thing I do if I have a child, like first thing I'm doing is checking that book. Is this the right contact information? Simple as, is this an email you're actively checking? Is it your email? Because I see that all the time. It's the parent email. If you put your office email, a lot of spam blockers, you're not going to get it. If you email me cold from Emory, sometimes I have a lot of spam blockers. But simple things like that, like what can you physically do in the process? It's create a recruiting, almost like a business profile, business email. Basically, that's just for recruiting. Send everything there. Easy Gmail account. That way, you both have access to it. You can see it, but just some really simple tips that you can do.
Which I feel like is getting a little bit at what we're talking about in terms of communication. So I was going to split it up towards ball sports and kind of generally as well. So if we'll kind of give you Coach Leavitt and Coach Kindt, the first part of this is what kind of expectations do you have of student athletes in this process? What are forms of communication that are best for you? What kind of expectation would you kind of expect them to see in that process when we think about the students?
So this one for me, so I've coached at many different levels. Like I coach at Auburn now and the SEC, and so the way we have to process emails is a lot different than the way I did at Southern Miss. And um, I'll say this: if you have to write me a 2-page essay on why I should recruit you at Auburn, I'm just going to delete it because I don't have enough time. I get about 100 to 150 emails a day from coaches, athletes. We are not just recruiting the best kids regionally, recruiting the best kids internationally. And so the best emails I ever get are, hey coach, congrats on your season, congrats on this individual. Here are my times, GPA, interest, and major. Short and sweet. I can read it in 10 seconds. And if your times hit our standards, I will reply back instantly with, can I get a transcript, a video, can I get your coach's contact? And then those are the steps I usually take. If, again, the less is better, and the details do matter. You want to say something that draws my eye, whether it's you're congratulating me on, a performance we had as a team. And again, if you congratulate me on a performance my team got last, I'm gonna assume that you didn't really look through the results either. So again, it kind of comes back to, if you take the time initially, if this is a school you're really interested in, then you need to take more than 30 seconds and look at the website. You need to invest in, look at the roster, look at the times they're running, look at the times that they're competing against, compare them to what you're doing right now, and make a decision on whether or not that's a fit. I probably respond to 10% of the emails with more than just a, here are our standards. If you hit our standards, which are public knowledge on our website, I generally will respond back pretty quickly. But you do need to do your research. I think that's the biggest thing, especially in a sport like mine where it's pretty black and white. You're either fast or you're not fast. If you're trying to convince me that you're fast despite your times not being fast, I'm not going to spend that much time on that email. So.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of that, especially the brevity piece, right? I think, it's nice to get a well-crafted email, but at the same time, I'm just looking for a couple things. I'm looking for if you've attached your academic information and how fast you can be, right? I think that's the two things that I'm looking for initially. And then as we develop this relationship, when we talk on the phone or we text and things like that, we'll learn a little bit more about you. But the thing that's going to get my interest immediately is going to be the things that I need to know, academics, and are you able to compete at this level? In terms of like how I like to be communicated with, I mean, my phone has been buzzing in my pocket this entire time. I imagine that's recruits, whether it's emails or texts. Everything goes to the same place. So I don't necessarily care if it's coming through a text message or an email. Whatever your kid feels more comfortable communicating with is fine. I think if it's a text, they should, no matter what, they should always have a signature on that text, because I rarely save recruits' numbers unless it gets deep into the process. And I don't want to start getting texts from somebody and I'm just like, this is great information, but I have no idea who this person is. So just a reminder to always kind of sign it off with hey, coach just had a meet. I want to update you. By the way, this is Jack. And then I know who it's from, and that way I can keep track of that information a little bit easier. But yeah, I think it's certainly, I think kids are probably texting a lot more than they are emailing. I know the kids on my current team right now, now they don't even respond to text. It's more like group me or WhatsApp or even Instagram. So I need to find out another way of how the 15, 16-year-olds communicating now. But for the most part, I'm more than willing to communicate with them in whatever capacity makes the most sense for them.
Thanks for sharing that. I think what I also want to kind of highlight for you all as parents is that Coach Ritchie would love to be able to help with students as they're crafting emails, and their college counselor, if they're still there, we want to be able to make sure that we're working in coordination with it. So know that you have someone that there's multiple people on this team that want to make sure that you're communicating well. So as that second part of it is, speaking of different mediums, I don't know if Instagram wants to come up towards this, but when we think about ball sports specifically, a lot of times people talk about the highlight reel, the film, do you want 3 films, 3 hours worth of their quality, or do you want 10 seconds? How long till you lose interest? Do you just want us showing you a dunk reel? What is it that you are looking for? So this is for Coach Rogan and Coach Jackson, obviously, if you don't mind sharing a little bit more how you would want to go about doing that.
And absolutely send me a dunk reel anytime. But think about an email. Some of it is for me at Emory, at a high academic institution, and for Coach here as well. First thing I need to see is GPA, because that dunk reel is great. But if I see a 2 as the first number, delete. And that is what it is. There's so many times I get excited about someone, and I've learned as a young assistant, it was okay, let's start with the academics before I get a little too excited. But yeah, so it's GPA for us, and it's going to go a little bit deeper in that regard. But highlights are great. It gives me a get my attention with the highlight. And I don't want to get too specific unless I have 50 basketball parents in here, but it's for basketball. I don't want to see a free throw per se. One thing, tell me the percentage, but I don't want to see that. And so nothing longer than a minute, think that's fine. Again, you're just trying to get my interest quickly. It also needs to be easily accessible. One click, I should be able to view it. It's the same as like when you're talking about marketing and those of you that are in that industry. If it's more than 2 clicks, no one's doing it. If you send stuff to your students and they've got to click it 3 times, they're not going to do it. Same as coaches. Email logs going to be heavy, the 100+ emails a week, very similar because we have to cast a big net at higher academic institutions. And so it needs to be simple, 1-2 clicks, I get to the video. If I've got to sign in, create a profile, that's going to be tough, I'll be honest with you. I'm not saying never, but during this time of the year, probably not. Then it's full film. You can always add that. Like, that's okay to add a full film. Do I need 2 or 3? No. Sometimes if I need to see more information, I'll ask you for that. I've asked, like, show me your best game, show me your worst game of why you struggled.
For us, similar here, definitely GPA and transcript. I get an email and it's nice information there, but I kind of just respond back, hey, I need a transcript, GPA, because there's no point in us getting excited about a player, not knowing if they can get in. And so if you're targeting certain schools, you want academics, you want whether it's medicine, law, whatever it is, I think that's what this is all about. So you're doing the research on the schools. You know maybe what the academic requirements are, what the middle 50% is, whether the school requires ACT, SAT testing. So that's the biggest thing. Want to highlight as well, but if you have that GPA, you attach the transcript, all of that. And then even here, I'm sure it's a little bit better, but sometimes I'll get people saying, hey, my GPA is this, but then it's really not. And so just that information is what I need. And my first email back is probably not as like nice. It's not like it's mean, but I'm just like, thank you for this. Thank you for reaching out. I will throw in an exclamation point. But then I'll say, give me that transcript, test scores, fill out our questionnaire. Because if we do get to the pre-read process, our admissions team, we need that to all speak together. So yeah, highlight, grades, transcript. And if you do have a connection, that's great. I will read that. I do appreciate a nice email, whether you know someone on the team, someone who went there, that's fine for me. Because it does like give a personal connection. You've actually thought about the school versus just like you said, go Lions, and we're not the Lions either. So
yeah, I want to add really quickly, if you don't mind. Don't be upset or shocked if you don't hear from us, meaning the head coach. Because I'm telling you right now, first emails, unless it's personal connections, my assistant's going to answer it first. And a lot of, especially the higher levels you get, people have assistants or recruiting coordinators. That's okay if that's the person that is responding to you. Now, if you get to campus and that is your first time meeting the head coach, like that can be a little bit tricky at times, or if you don't meet them at all, then, well, that's another story. But otherwise, like that is okay if you're early contacts. It's not with the head coach, because there's a lot of times I see parents where the head coach is never called, especially bigger sports, larger pool they're recruiting. There are certain assistants that are assigned to certain recruits. And so like we recruit very nationally. And so somebody has California, somebody has the Northeast, somebody has Midwest, the South. And so just don't, think it's all over if you don't hear from the head coach.
Can I add one more thing? It kind of ties into like how you all can help in this process as well. Your kid's gonna have to get comfortable talking on the telephone. Um, my, I, I've been coaching for 17 years, and my recruiting call time on the phone has shrunk significantly. And I don't think I've gotten, less verbose. I think the kids that I'm talking to aren't comfortable on the phone. So I give a lot of advice to young kids in this process of like, talk to your uncle, talk to your grandparents, just start calling people. So you're used to being on the phone and being comfortable there. Because I think a lot of kids just aren't comfortable talking on the phone. So that's something that you all can also help with, is making sure that they are at least conversational with an adult. Because I think that's something that is that's not part of their daily life outside of being at school face to face. most of their communication is going to be digital, right? So getting them comfortable with that as early as possible, that stands out. Like that makes a big difference. If there's a bunch of kids that are equal, smart enough, fast enough, and I can just talk to this kid, I'm like, I like that kid way more than somebody who's just a 4-minute conversation. So I think that's another way that you all can kind of help in that process as well.
This there's been significant changes in legislation. There's been a lot of things that are coming up, and as we all pay attention to the transfer portal, what is these terms that are being thrown around with NIL, what are all these things? So my specific question would be for you two, as we think about Division I athletics, is how is that playing out? What kind of advice would you have for the changes, how it plays out in rosters and transfer? Is there anything that you would say kind of broadly, even beyond your sport as well?
Yeah, I'm going to be really broad here because I think if there's anybody that tells you that they know what's happening, they're lying. I don't think any 4 of us really know exactly what the future looks like. I know that it's definitely going to be different than it's been the last 20 years for sure. But in terms of how this process is going to move forward, I think it's important to ask coaches about it, right? Because we're all having conversations on our campus with our leadership, ADs, school presidents, conference commissioners, like all of it's changing pretty rapidly. And so it's important to ask the questions about like where are you guys at? Are you dedicating any spots for transfers? How many spots are you dedicating to incoming freshmen? Are there going to be roster limits in your sport? Because that's something that has been rumored for a while, and that's likely coming. So, asking those questions is important because what you don't want to have happen is like you don't ask those questions, you fall in love. We just had this instance on our campus, a girl who's in her senior year, who was planning on going Power 5, ACC, Big Ten, and she got shut out because they're taking in transfers and there's roster limits, so there's no walk-on spots. And so now she's starting her recruiting process in October of her senior year, and that's not what she planned on. And she just didn't ask the right questions early on in this process. So I think it's important that you can ask these questions. Like the coach might not have a ton of concrete answers, but those conversations are happening on our campuses, so it's important to ask about it. Like I said, I don't know that anybody really knows exactly what's going to happen. There's lawsuits and appeals and all these things that are going to shape what college athletics looks like in the next 10 to 20 years. But in the immediate, coaches are going to be able to react to the things that are happening right then and there on their campuses. And it's important to just ask honest questions about where your kid might fit in that.
Yeah, you might have to put together another presentation next year, have a completely different talk. Yeah, there's not a lot I can add to it. There's about every day we find out something new. Tomorrow we could all wake up and the world's a completely different place at college athletics. I think you got to do your due diligence, ask coaches what they think is going to happen. If you have a incoming or a rising senior right now, I think it's important to stay up to date with what's going on. NIL, all that stuff, transfer portal, I'll talk about the status quo. We'll pretend like everything will stay the same for another year or two. I think they asked me a question about NIL because I guess Auburn has a collective. If any of you guys have the number to that collective, let me know so I can call it. That'd be nice to have access to that. But that is a growing world that, in Olympic sports, there is a niche for it. We have a small one with our own cross-country team, but it's very grassroots. They have access to different businesses, different individuals that are looking to promote student athletes. And so what we do is we put them in touch with different entities that can discuss what they do. It's a piece of the puzzle, but I caution to say that you put all your eggs into that basket when it comes to if you're trying to get school paid for. Olympic sports is not the place to go and get paid in scholarships or NIL. Transfer portal, I say this about the transfer portal. There are good uses for it. Sometimes you do get into a bad situation, whether you miss home or your coach is actually an abusive psycho. But for the most part, I think the way I try to head it off is building that relationship on the front end. And they talked about how the verbal commitment is something that they take very seriously here. And I think it's one piece of that puzzle of building a relationship. And I know from our end and the way I operate, I'm very candid and upfront with my student athletes and potential student athletes in the recruiting process about what our expectations are. And so I'm very upfront about the expectations, the demands, what it looks like if you succeed, what it looks like when you fail, what we ask of you in both regards. And so I think building those relationships on the front end are the most important. So being more comfortable talking on the phone, be more comfortable asking the uncomfortable question. You don't want to get somewhere and realize day one, wow, actually, this is not what I thought it was going to be like. Look, if you ask me a question, I don't know how to answer it, that's a red flag. Like if that's an important thing to you and I'm waffling on it, then you need to make a decision on whether or not this is the place you want to be for the next 4 years. My idea is I want you to come here, know all the good things we have and know all the bad things so that when adversity does strike, because it will strike and it will strike very often, especially at my level, I want you to be able to fight through it, work through it, and trust that the plan we have in place for the next 4 years will work. And that's the way I try to offset the transfer portal. I feel like I've done a pretty good job with my roster. I've only had 2 kids in my 4 years go in the portal, and they both went home because they're homesick. I have not had anyone leave because they just thought the program sucked. And that doesn't mean we don't have kids that are failing left and right. Trust me, we have some kids that still have not gone off the ground. But for the most part, I think our culture and the expectations we laid forth in the beginning have been good ones. And so, but a lot of it too has been the uncomfortable conversations on the front end. I might be the one here that doesn't just sell butterflies and rainbows from the beginning. I'm kind of like, hey, you want to do track and field at Auburn? Well, let me tell you how it's going to be. And I might scare off a lot of people, but I do think that's the conversations you need to have if Division I athletics and really all levels at this point, they've gotten to the point where everyone's really competitive. I think those are the questions you need to be willing to ask.
I want to start on the left side for this, and then if you want to jump in, you're welcome to. But we have 4 schools here that are also represent a selectivity that's actually really noticeable and distinguished in that way. And so we think about that relationship between admissions and athletics. What does that look like? How does that play out for you? What is it? How do you walk through that as a coach as you bring forward student athletes that you're interested in as well?
We have a direct relationship with admissions. And so anytime I have a prospective student athlete, I'm talking with them with admissions. And similar to your counseling services here, it was still with the college counseling, it's still like they want to know who that person is, not ACT 33. Tell me about her, what's like, they can see all of that on a transcript. But we do have that relationship. They're in the process, doing it enough, enough time now. I can roughly I can see a profile average and know, and then those ones that are outliers or a little on the cusp, that's where I'm going to talk further with. And that's what can move the needle. The more I know about the student athlete, the more that can help. Because it's understanding when you're applying to an institution like Emory, like something I get all the time from parents when it comes to merit money, especially is, well, such and such has a 4.0 and she has 5 or 6 APs. So does everybody else. So do a lot of people, put it that way, at Emory. And so it's understanding, like, yes, sports can move the needle there and we have those conversations, but yes, the short answer is we do have that relationship.
Yeah, it's this is my second year at Hopkins, and so been in an adjustment with our admissions, and we're going back to requiring the SAT and ACT for the future. So we're going to know kind of what that range will be for the scores. We have someone in our athletics office who is our admissions liaison, so we can't like talk to admissions directly, which is a little bit tougher sometimes. And so hey, this is a basketball recruit, and we can share that. How much does it move the needle where I can guarantee anything? You have to have the test scores for me to be like, okay, now we can request like a likely letter or whatever that is. And so just understanding what is required with the, whether it's ED1, ED2, and the biggest thing is it's really just, are you a competitive academic student? And that's kind of what it's going to take for us. We can help a little bit in terms of letting them know it's a recruit, but then they still have to be in line, like Coach says, with what we're looking for. So I would say that's the biggest thing. Again, the same thing with the financial piece. I know there's a lot of schools that will give that merit money. We're just a full need school. So if you are going to look at a place like Hopkins, it is going to be something where you're going to be paying and you have to have those grades to get in. So it's pretty straightforward.
And Coach hit on something really quick here that I'm curious if you guys know what it is. How many of you know what a likely letter is? All right. Got 3 or 4. Pretty good. So an admissions likely letter, that's something a term you will hear a lot at the high academic Division III level. A likely letter is exactly what it sounds like. It's not a fancy term, but is a letter from admissions that in so many words states, if your student athlete stays in line academically of the student, whatever it is that institution is deemed acceptable, if they stay with doing what they're doing in the classroom, it is likely that they will be accepted into the institution. Because when you are applying to NCAA Division III schools, we don't have a contract as far as you're not signing something. And so admissions, why those came about is admissions is trying to give families the most reassurance as they can because, hey, I would love to come to Emory, but I need a little bit more reassurance and you have a spot if you get accepted. That if shit sounds scary to you. And so that is a question you should ask of, are there any reassurances, guarantees you can give me in that regard? And so that likely letter, again, is different for every school in that process, but that's something, for example, at Emory, it comes directly to the student athlete. I'm copied on it. And again, it's there for insurance, meaning you can't all of a sudden stop going to school, start getting bad grades, conduct issues. Like that's what that's built for. But it is the biggest reassurance we can give families.
Yeah, and so I would check if you're looking at different academic D3 schools or different academic schools that you ask about that process. Even for us, it's not something that I tell everyone about, just because we have kids who we know are probably going to get in for us based on, again, the test scores. So then we'll tell them about that. Hey, once you've applied ED1, you can request a likely letter. And we can request it for anyone who we're recruiting, but there's some other internal, I guess, levels that they have that, again, I'm not supposed to tell you guys, so I won't. But then we can request that, and then it's up to admissions, again, to decide if they're going to allow you guys to do that or to receive one.
I can add a little bit to this. I've worked at 5 different schools, and my line is always, every school that I've worked at, I couldn't have gotten into with my grades out of high school. So I've only worked at really selective places. I started at NYU and then was at Harvard and then West Point, Caltech, and now Georgetown. And every single admissions process was different at all 5 places, right? Some places I have a number of spots that I'm allowed to divvy up how I'd like within academic standards. Other places I had no spots whatsoever, right? So I think it's important to ask specifically what the relationship is with admissions with each school you're talking to. Because even we're D1, but we're D1 non-scholarship, right? So we basically operate the same way Emory and Hopkins do with admissions, right? So even within that, ask that question early too. Is there scholarship attached to this? Is there not? Even if they're a D1, doesn't necessarily mean that they have scholarship to give out. And the carrot might be just the admissions piece, right? But at each one, it's different. So asking specifically what that relationship is with admissions and what that timeline is really, really important, even if the schools are similar. We recruit against a lot of the similar schools academically to us. And I know that BC, Duke, Northwestern, they recruit differently than I do in terms of their relationship with admissions. So it's important, even though schools are similar, to ask specifically what that relationship is like, because it's going to be drastically different from school to school.
And we see that as well, right? In terms of how we interact with and what expectations sometimes we hear back from colleges for our athletes as well. And so continue to, again, get on our radar and so that we can identify some of those students earlier on as well to make sure that you can get a better sense of expectations for that. we're going to take one last question and then open it up to a couple questions from the audience for those that can take them. But let's see here. Wanted to ask just feedback. There is paid recruitment services that are out there. There's a lot of ways that people think about how you kind of pay to get yourself noticed a little bit more. What value do you give to that? What place does it have in the process, and how would that work best for a Westminster family?
I think those are fantastic to use for film services. If you're not the tech savvy family, a lot of our student athletes are tech savvy these days, but if you're don't have the time or to cut up a whole basketball game, football game, soccer, et cetera, then I think that's where those services can be phenomenal. Even if it's just, I just need you to create the highlight, like, let me sign off on, yes, I like this, yes, I don't, then I think those are great to help you with that. Every sport's going to be very different as to which service. Like, I wish I could tell you this is the one service that is overly used, but it is going to change sport by sport. But I think the film for our sports, the film is important if you can cut that down.
I think they're valuable for film. A lot of them have, if we want to search just, hey, what is the GPA? And I want to see if we can recruit some kids there. So having the film, the highlights, some of them have where you can upload transcripts, your test scores, all that, and it looks pretty neat and nice, and we can filter through that. So for basketball, like NCSA, field level are some of them. I don't know for other sports, but those are the main two that we're using a lot of.
I would say for us, it's kind of the opposite. We don't really need film, right? I agree that for those sports, they definitely are valuable. For us as time-based sports, I don't necessarily need to see it in order to know that you can do it. At some point, I will want to see it, but not necessarily from a service, especially. I think it's way better to hear from the kid at that point. So like a lot of those recruiting service emails, I've gotten to the point now where I don't open them. I really don't, because they are telling me information that I could get from them themselves or from plenty of other resources that have time databases, things like that, but I can get that information anyways. So from I think I'm speaking for you here, right? That for our sport, it's not necessarily something that I would spend a lot of money on. Now I do know that there's like, it sounds like you wouldn't need these services because it's in-house here, but there are like consulting services that help you kind of navigate the process and craft emails, things like that, that don't actually go out and talk to coaches on your behalf. I could see the value a little bit if you really needed that help. But again, I don't think people in this room need it because you've got it within your administration here. Yeah, I think it's sport to sport.
If you don't mind, please give it a round of applause for all the questions that we drilled them with. I'm going to welcome Coach Richie back up.
We want to make sure that we give our audience in the aspect of time some opportunity to answer some questions. So we have some microphones, I think, that we can hand to our audience members for our group. NCAA has some interesting legislation. So Coach Aaron is unfortunately unable to answer any parent perspective questions tonight. And the least thing that we could do for Coach Aaron is get him dinged by the NCAA compliance office on his campus. So we do want to thank him for his time. But for Coach Jack, for Coach Rodney, for Coach Misha, do we have any questions from the audience that may be beneficial? We're going to limit these questions in the aspect of time. But are there any questions from the audience that we can ask? Oh, I can walk it over. Thank you, ma'am.
Testing.
You're on.
Good. So a phrase or a term I've been hearing a lot lately is professionalization of youth sports. And so, when I was coming up, you had to kind of play whatever your sport was at your high school in order to kind of get noticed. But now there's a lot more travel, a lot more AAU, things like that. So one of the questions I have is for you guys and for your recruiting team, how much of an emphasis on sports that do have club, soccer, baseball, things like basketball, things like that. how much of an emphasis are you guys putting on those clubs versus now the high schools?
Fantastic question. The club sports are probably what we see a lot as far as visibility when it comes in terms of recruiting because of the recruiting calendar. And so I know they are time sports before at the Division I level, there is that contact dead period. At Division III, the beauty of it is we don't have that. I can call you anytime. But as long as you're in high school. But for the club sports, so for example, there may be a random small club tournament going on right now for basketball. Like I'm not going to get there to New York because we have practice, for example. But high school wise, like, yes, I can catch a game, but I say that meaning like it would be a red flag to me if you were not playing at your high school, but you played a club sport. I'm just probably visibly going to see you in person on your club team, most likely. Just because club sports it's the summertime, basically. Everybody plays in the summer, every sport, swim, track, soccer, anything. Everybody's going to be in the summer. Whereas when we're in the school year, there's a time where all of us are off and on.
It's important to do both. For us being able to get out in the summer, it's easier for us to see those AAU tournaments that take place over the course of a few days versus when we're recruiting nationally. Like, during our season, I can't get out to, Atlanta. And I'm sure, this is her backyard anyway, so maybe she'll keep me out. But we have to really value both. I enjoy when people have that pride in their high school and the community that they've built in. So I think you definitely have to have the balance of both for basketball.
Yeah, I'll just add that I was really encouraged. We got toyed around today, and I asked the question of how many kids at this school play multi-sports, and I think the percentage was over 60 that play at least two. That's not the case at a lot of places, and I think that is a problem. Like, I think if a kid gets to me and they played 2 or 3 sports in high school, it means they probably have a lot more development left to go. And I really like that aspect of it.
We've got one in the back, Chris. I'll bring another one. It's good. I need to get my steps in.
Hello. Thank you all. This is good information. Can you speak a little bit to committable and non-committable offers? So, for instance, if you come to the student athlete and offer, at what point can the student athlete say, is this committable or non-committable? Because sometimes when you all come to offer, it's not necessarily, they may have to go further through the process, or you might want to see them, or before you finally say, yes, I'm going to give you a final offer.
For us at Hopkins in Division III, if we say, hey, we want to offer you a roster spot, or you want to then commit to the admissions process is typically how people word it. We wouldn't offer someone, whether coaching at Division III now or Division I in the past, unless we knew we wanted them. And so that commitment for most coaches is they're going to hold firm to it. There's been instances where some coaches will pull offers, and maybe even if someone's committed before they sign that national letter of intent, that does happen. It won't happen with me, but once you sign the national letter of intent, then that is binding there, and there's different things that set. But for Division III, we don't have that. So we can offer you, and you can commit, and we think we have you, and then come August, you're going somewhere else. So it's for Division III, there's not a binding document that will commit you to a school. We had someone who was transferring to our school. She told me in August that she signed with the Division I school, and so she's playing there now. So that's what we, can potentially deal with.
Yeah, there definitely are instances of coaches making more offers than spots that they have, and essentially whoever says yes first, right? And that is not. I don't think that's a very normal practice. Maybe D1 basketball.
Yeah, I'd say it's pretty common.
It's pretty common
there.
D1 basketball because you'll see kids that post on Twitter, Instagram saying, "I've got 25 offers." It's like you don't have 25 offers. You've had 25 conversations. but so that part can be confusing. And the other part too is I think it's important to only commit if you've been offered. I think I don't know if this has happened to you all, but a kid who's basically, I'm ready to commit and we're not quite there yet. That can also be a bit awkward in that space of like, hey, I want to commit. And it's like, well, we still got some time to kind of navigate this. So I would say it's nice to let a coach know that you're really, really interested, but maybe not offer a commitment unless you've been asked.
Awesome.
It's gonna really quick with that. The quick answer, it's different for every school, different for every sport. Because it's the question you want to ask with that is timeline. What is the time? One, it's two questions. What does an offer mean? For me, it means something different. It means based upon admissions you're in. For them, it could be, okay, this means you're signing on the fall, spring date, et cetera. But if they offer scholarships, but it's then the next question is, okay, I have the offer. What's my timeline? And that's something I'm going to ask now. If I'm going to make an offer and you tell me you need 6 months, I can't wait 6 months, most likely, depending on when I make an offer. But the timeline is an important question for you to ask.
Awesome. I've got time for, I think, one more. No pressure.
Well, it's sort of coming off of what you were saying regarding the timeline, specifically for seniors. You know, it is not uncommon for us to hear about students that are committing to a school or signing, I don't know, all the late spring, even into summer. What has been your experience with that? And I apologize, I don't know which season your sports are in. How patient should these kids be and when should they panic? And then the last part of that is, does ED1, ED2, regular application, does that make any impression on you all when you're recruiting?
Fantastic question. Love it. It's the freshman, you're good to go. You're in a good spot. Freshman parents, you're awesome. You're way ahead. Sophomore, same with you. Juniors, like you're getting ready to get to like the nitty gritty of it. Seniors, it's not panic time, but you should have a clear idea. If you don't have an offer right now in any sport as a senior, and the question needs to be asked, are you looking at the right school? It's not over. It's not end game. And I say that other piece about my background. So I actually played Division II before I transferred into Emory as a sophomore, and I committed in June. And so it's a lot of people could have said, hey, it's done. You got to move on. But it's very different for a lot of people. But you said something that's really important in regard to the admissions rounds. You're going to keep hearing me say this, every school and division is different. We're both high academic institutions in Division III, but our admissions process are probably extremely different. Maybe same practices, but for example, when we talked earlier about Division III, we don't have binding. We do in terms of an admission sense. So the biggest form of commitment I can get at Emory is you are committing to the early decision 1 or 2 process, meaning you are saying you're coming to Emory if you are accepted. And so for me, that's as same as you signing a national letter of intent. But that early decision rounds, it's important. But for example, at Emory, we in athletics, 90% of our student athletes are committing to the early decision 1 admissions round. Why? Percentage game. Okay, early decision 1, you've got a couple, maybe a little under 2,000 applicants. Early decision 2, I think we roughly got to 3,000. Regular decisions, over 35,000 applications. And so which round do you want to compete against? Somebody tells me they're applying regular decision. I'm not saying no, but that's going to be very challenging. Early decision 1, we're in good shape.
Yeah, the timeline is important for both perspectives. So I'm glad you asked that question, just in terms of for coaches, like, I don't often give like deadlines or timelines, because if it's someone I really want, I'm like, all right, you can decide when you need to decide. I will wait. And so I was at Rhodes College in Memphis, Tennessee before this. We've had a few players from the school here. And so there it was more kind of maybe like ED2, early action, or even regular decision with who we were recruiting. And then sometimes basketball people do like to decide late. Maybe they want those Division II offers or Division I. So that was part of even the strategy there. It's like, well, these kids are waiting for something. They don't maybe know they're not going to get it potentially. And so we could get some pretty good kids who would come to Rhodes there. Here at Hopkins, and just like at Emory, because of the admissions being so tough. ED1, once we get kids to be ED1, we're really excited because we know it's hard to get people into the school, and then that's that commitment, like she said, with it. But we will, you know, depending on how many we get with ED1, we will still be looking, you know, or we'll be done. But there are a lot of schools who have kind of different cycles. At Rhodes, I would have maybe one ED1 a year, and then the other would be ED2 or early action. So it's kind of all about the schools that you're looking at. So I would ask the coaches typically kind of what they typically recruit maybe when those deadlines are happening. And then also, what is your deadline? I will ask recruits that. What is your timeline? Do I need to be pushing this pre-read? And so we know if you're deciding between, you know, Emory, NYU, whatever, all these different schools, and I know they're going to be pushing ED1 too, so I have to make sure we have that done. Or if your timeline's a little bit later, it all depends on what you're looking for. But if you are looking for schools like us, I'd say ED1 would be the best route because best chance of getting in, and we're also recruiting a lot of talented players and sometimes the same players.
I'll just add one quick thing to that. I think especially just to speak to like the when to panic part. I think, especially if you're looking at high academic schools, I don't want to speak for everybody here, but I think we prefer to take as long as possible a lot of times because it gives us more information. I think we're seeing a lot more kids panic earlier because we've moved the timeline up like a ton in the last 5 years. It's continuing to move forward. So kids are committing first semester of their junior year now or the summer before their junior year, and that creates panic if you have a friend that's on the same club team as you that's doing that and you feel like I'm way behind. Um, you're not. You're not at all behind. Especially because a lot of times those are going to be at some, you know, major problem. If you're looking at high academic D1 or D3, like you can really go into your senior year. And I know that ED is important. So that's like October, November. For us at Georgetown, we don't push our kids to go early. We can't actually. That's reserved for kids, not athletes. So when we commit to somebody, we're committing to them in the regular decision process. So again, it's different for every school, different for every sport, but I think that the panic comes with how early they're seeing their friends commit or people that they compete against, and that can cause a lot of panic. And I don't think it's necessary. It's an outlier more than it is like the norm.
Last thing, and I swear you can cut my cord, but
You don't have one.
yeah, I was like, oh yeah, I'm wireless. Comparison is the thief of joy. Quickest thing, we've all heard it, but because the sports world is so media focused, you're seeing all of these offers and commitments to 2028s and 2029s. And I have a sticky note just so I can figure out which grade is this person actually in. I'm serious. It's a neon sticky note. So I know, okay, it's an eighth grader. I can't even answer this email, but do not it's so hard for your student athletes to not look online and see, and even they're going to practice every day and somebody might have just committed somewhere. That's okay. They need to be active in their process, but it's okay if somebody committed 3 years ago. Great for them, but that has nothing to do with their process.
Can you give a round of applause for these panelists? I just couldn't be more thankful for you all coming to spend time with us. I know some of y'all are in season, some of y'all are getting ready to start your season, some of you in non-traditional season. For these folks to come spend time with our community, it just means the world to us. You provided a great wealth of knowledge to our group, and let me explain this to our families. This is the first of many times where we'll do programming like this. And so we challenge you as a collective recruiting team to please spread the word to folks that couldn't make it tonight. I'm going to be able to share our slideshow presentation with some more details for all that were able to attend. We're looking forward to doing another one of these events in February 24th. So mark it on your calendar. But again, Coach Jack, Coach Aaron, we're new friends. I can't thank you all enough for coming down here. I've had the privilege of competing against Coach Rogan and Coach Jackson throughout my career. I know how great of coaches you all are from our time competing against each other, and you were even better panelists. So again, thank you all so much for being here tonight. Families, thank you so much for investing your time and your energy, and also investing your time in your kids' opportunity to compete at the next level. It's clear that your student athlete is excelling in something that you're passionate about. So congratulate yourself on helping your student athlete find their passion in athletics. And please come lean upon us as your resources here on this campus to help them achieve their goals and dreams. And we look forward to being here and being supportive of that. Again, thank you so much for being here. I look forward to meeting many of you. Again, my 2- and 5-year-old have already gone to bed, so please don't hesitate to stop me if you'd like to meet, speak a little bit more. And again, thank you so much for being here tonight. Good.